Good evening and welcome to Going for Two. This is the only YouTube podcast in human recorded history to feature a male and female host drinking our way through the important topics of the day, as long as they touch the football world and not in that way. I am Zach Law and this is Sharonasaurus Rex. Tonight, of course, I bring the guest and the beer, and she brings apparently the ace beer right there in the Dragon's Milk. We welcome back Jody Smith of Gridiron Experts. We talk about how we're mortgaging our homes to bet against the AFC South champ in the playoffs, how to deal with this year's fantasy craziness, and whether we can add point per proposal to the kicking net to our league scoring. Hey there, Jody.
Good evening, Zach and Sharona. It's good to be on with you two again. You're one of my favorite shows that I've ever joined, and not just because we get to drink our way to your little opening tagline there, but you're just genuinely good people. I like talking to you. So
we love having you on, Jody. We love having you on. You're one of our personal favorites too.
So awesome. Tonight you are leading off with the legendary Pumpkinator. Is that correct? The 2016 vintage is out.
Yeah, you're one of the handful of people from the Twitter football community who've been lucky enough to get one of them mailed to you. But yeah, the 2016 vintage just dropped Monday or Tuesday, depending on where you got it. And I was able to pick up three bombers today, and I've got at least 12 more on hold at a place where I've got connections. So I'm sure I can ship you another one this year. But as you know, what a outstanding beer it is. So it's just besides the weather cooling off, supposedly it's not yet, but it's one of the things to look forward to in the fall is the old Pumpkinator drop.
There's something to be said for the seasonal beers. I'm definitely having the darker stuff tonight. I'm having the Quasimodos. There's a quad from Three Taverns. They were doing it in just bombers. Now they do 4-packs, which is nice. So this is the color your beer should be. And I really couldn't pass this up when I saw it. I had this beer once, like 3 years ago, and now it's in 4-packs as well. Evil Twins, Even More Jesus. This is like a super heavy stout. It's like a 12% stout, and of course it comes in a 16-ounce can because I had to buy canned beers because I'm going to the beach, and I just prefer that. And I would like to say, hey, Don, I'm wearing my White Sox hat and honor your Cubs because they're just 7 wins away. It's just inevitable. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road, but you're going to get there.
What's your stout beer again?
This is Even More Jesus.
Oh gosh, let me see it.
They have like 15 versions of this. Evil Twin does some weird names. They had a version that they like age in Pappy Van Winkle barrels and all this stuff, but this it's fun on its own. It's pitch dark. It's apparently the consistency of and color of motor oil. So I'm looking forward to that one. If I can survive to the end. But hey, I survived the ultimate sports event of last weekend. I attended the Titans-Browns game. And got out a victor. The best part of last week's show was talking to Mike about how we both were picking our team to lose. And sadly, the Browns had a little more want to when it comes to losing that game. I don't know what it is about coaches going for 2 when their team is down 2 scores, but Malarkey did it in week 1 against the Vikings, and they lost by 9. I don't think they were going to come back, but the Browns did it. And if they hadn't gone for 2 on that first touchdown, they would have had a chance to tie at the end. But the thing I was looking forward to most was I like to look at the out-of-date jerseys, and with the Browns, I knew I had a lot of options. The guy 2 rows in front of me had an authentic, obviously brand new RG3 Browns jersey. And I was like, that is a lot of optimism. That's like the guy who bought like a Case Keenum Texans jersey, which I've actually seen. I saw a couple of Joe Juravicius, which I was like, he played for them? Okay. And
yeah, but the problem with that is you can look at it from, I guess, 2 perspectives. Of something being a cool throwback. When it's a player like Joe Juravicius, it's not a cool throwback. It's a cheap owner who's had the same jersey in his closet for like 20 years. And I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to be a Cleveland Brown supporter. I wouldn't want to go out and buy another one either. My favorite is the the jersey with the quarterback. I think it's Cleveland, right? It's got the
Yeah.
jersey with the
All
names
the
all taped to the
But it's
back.
going down to the floor at this point with all the
That's
guys.
awesome. I mean, just this year, jersey alone through the first 5 weeks would have been, what, 4 names? If you look at Whitehurst playing for them, yeah, that was another name.
They've had 5 guys, and they did have a couple of fans, and I think they're actually wearing last year's color rush because they're wearing that bright orange, and it was Terrell Pryor and one Gary Barnage, which was random, but hey, at least he's a current player. But I gave the props to the guys who were wearing either Joe Thomas, there's some Joe Hayden out there, and of course the Jim
Josh
Brown.
Gordon?
I did not see any. There's one guy in our section with the Johnny Manziel, and you never can tell if that's on purpose or a joke. But it's a different experience now because my parents bought season tickets when the Titans moved there in '99, and they had to buy an extra seat to get the lower deck. So I had that third seat, and it's just weird because they've been in the same seats for almost 20 years, and almost everybody in the section has kind of, for one reason or another, has left. Like there's only one couple, it's like a row behind us, that were there from the beginning. If you remember Beer Man, who was the guy who sat in the front row, had the giant Beer Man jersey, and he wore like the leather helmet hat that they sold a few years ago. My mom told me he like slipped and fell, and now he's like a quadriplegic. Like he had an accident. Like there's just bad stories. Like a guy in our row, he had pancreatic cancer and he ended up dying last year, and he was like a part of the military. And like people have gotten divorced, and of course the team's been horrible for the last 8 years. So it's weird, the tale of like Section 143. I don't know how much longer my parents will keep those tickets, but it's not. The crowd was kind of into it. It was definitely a better experience, but I don't know. It's so weird being, in the same spot for like 20 years and having like kind of the memories from all these games.
Now, I saw some people tweeting that there were more, this was early on, that there might be more Browns fans than Titans fans. Was it like that or not?
There were a lot of Browns fans, and I was really impressed by the people who were tailgating, and they were actually drinking those Bud Light cans that were Browns. The Bud Light, they have the cans for every team in the NFL. That's like the worst beer search you could do. Ooh, I want a can for every team. I'm sure people are doing that.
Maybe, do you buy like a case of beer? Is it all one team in there, or is it just random team? So you actually would have to go buy,
It's the local, I think it's the local team. So you would have to do some serious trading to get them all.
I guarantee there's people, though, if they were to randomly just put each of the 32 teams on helmets and just put them in cases, I guarantee there's thousands of people who would start collecting them, and they probably would sell a lot more beer. I mean, not that you need help with selling Bud Light, but I don't know, just an interesting idea.
Yeah, that's a downside. Like last year, they had a place where they sold local beer, and that was good. But this year, all they have is the Kona. They're selling like Hawaiian beer, of course, because of Mariota. So like a longboard lager, like a 16-ounce beer is $9.50. I'm like, well, after one of those, I'm like, okay, that was a fun experience. But you knew, just based on the way the Titans had played the last few years, you knew 28-13. I don't know, because they kept the Browns in the game, and then they made that comeback. And didn't they fire their special teams coach? Because that first onside kick by Cleveland, that was a really not good effort by the Titans. Like, the guy kicked it short in the middle, and the Titans guy like ran up to it like the kid getting his Christmas gift, and he actually hit it to the Browns. But luckily it was 28-19. It didn't matter. But of course, what blew me away was the fact that Mariota completed 2 like 40-yard passes for the first time in his career, and it was 2 diving catches, but he did complete them, and Kendall Wright lives, which is nice. And they had some really good runs. I mean, that like 40-yard run he made at the beginning of the game was great. And
Kendall Wright had a big day for a very limited number of snaps. That guy just, made had some nice fantasy production. Like I said, he only played a handful of snaps, 20-something? And he had a big day. But you sound kind of down for a team that's actually, as far as I can see, has exceeded expectations. What are the Titans, 3-3? The defense is what's helping them stay in the games. And you got a very winnable division here. Look, I mean, I know from the Texans, I don't expect them to do anything this week. The Colts, this is a very winnable game for the Titans. Their defense, I think I looked at it.
I think they've only won 2 games, haven't they?
The Titans have only given up, 6 touchdown passes? They have they're like top 6 when it comes to fantasy points, which, I'm a fantasy guy, but they're 5th or 6th in points to running backs, and the same thing with receivers and quarterbacks.
Yeah, their defenses, if you watch them, they're lucky to be. I mean, they've not faced.
It's an issue of scheduling and some breaks, but
yeah.
It's a very winnable division.
No, they are 3-3. They beat the Browns, the Lions.
The Browns really made an effort. Like, they obviously watched their film because they shut DeMarco Murray down early in the game. And Delaney Walker either wasn't on the field that much or didn't get targeted that much. So they took away, like, the number 1 receiver and DeMarco Murray. And then Mariota had to make passes, and he did. And Kendall Wright, I think, went out for like 14 pass routes, I think, in the game and had 8 catches. And, of course, the people around me are like, hey, did you start him in fantasy? I'm like, well, I have him in a dynasty team. I thought he was dead meat, but, hey, he might be useful now. Try to get something for him.
Who, Kendall Wright?
Yeah.
That'd be a good,
okay.
He's the one guy on the team who's got a little bit of speed. They have to do the exotic smash mouth plays that never seem to work. Like, they had a play where they did an end around to Tajay Sharp, who's might be faster than Andre Johnson at this point, but I'm not sure. And got 1 whole yard. Poor Tajay, only 1 touch all day. And some kind of crazy play where they put both running backs in and tried some kind of option play that didn't really work. But other than that, they moved it with big plays, which is, hey, it's something you didn't see from the Titans so far. But one thing that's cool, Mariota, last 2 weeks, 3 touchdown passes in each game. How many times in his career did Steve McNair have consecutive 3 touchdown games? 0. So, different era, of course. Dang, if Jeff Fisher would let Steve McNair actually throw the ball in his career, maybe a different story. But Mariota's been a great fantasy pickup, and, all you poor guys have to write waiver articles saying, pick Mariota up. Dang it all, he's been taken.
Still, I wrote the waiver wire piece for Gridiron Experts this year, and I wrote it again this week, and he's still less than 50% owned in ESPN leagues. And he's got, 7 touchdowns in the last 2 games. He's the QB6 for the season now. So you're talking about not just a guy that should be started every week, but he's almost an elite starter. I understand that a lot of the production has come in the last 2 weeks, and I think in the first game where he was good, but still.
You mean this guy right here?
Yeah, I had him.
I love him. I've got him.
I had him early on and dropped him.
In my home league, we have 20 roster spots, so I have 3 quarterbacks. So I waited on my quarterbacks this year, and I got Matt Ryan, Phillip Rivers, and Marcus Mariota. So I've been just rotating them in and out in the first 6 games, and I've been perfect so far every time. Like this week, I started Mariota, and I still lost. There's nothing I could have done because he scored as many points as I would have gotten out of Matt Ryan. So, but I love Marcus Mariota. I kind of wish that he had ended up with Chip Kelly, because that would be so interesting. What with his throwing ability and his running ability, it'd be interesting what he would be doing with Chip Kelly. But that said, I have absolutely no confidence at all in Chip Kelly as an NFL coach. But could be a different story if he had Mariota.
Man, the 49ers have gone just –
they're terrible.
No talent in like a 2-year period.
That's not his fault. He inherited a really, really bad roster, but I just don't think –
drafting injured guys and just –
the main thing that I've seen from Chip Kelly is he's making the same mistake that a lot of coaches make, where he's trying to make players fit his system. Perfect example is DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray was trash last year for Philadelphia. It was not a good fit at all. And look at what he's doing for the Titans. He's fantastic. He's completely revitalized. And that was simply an issue of the Titans coaching staff recognizing what DeMarco Murray could and couldn't do, what he was good at. So they changed their offense to fit his strength rather than Chip Kelly, who's one of them people that thinks that he can he's so smart that he can make these players do things they're not really good at. Like last year, Sam Bradford trying to run read option. If you'd watch
oh, my gosh.
They didn't respect that run at all.
Yeah, don't say.
It's Sam Bradford. He's very brittle, and he's not much of a runner. And they would, the defensive ends or the linebacker, whoever was on the outside, never respected that run. And that's Hugh Jackson, Cleveland's head coach. He's one of those coaches that is smart enough. He changes his offense to fit his personnel, which is why he's been such a successful coach. Offensively, he's been great. Everywhere he's gone, he's established in Oakland and Cincinnati and in Cleveland. You're seeing with Isaiah Crowell. He's established a strong running game, and I think the Browns made a really good hire. And when they get through this phase here where they're kind of in an analytics-driven type thing where they're trying to completely blow everything up and start over, I think, in a few years, 2 or 3 years, the Browns could be a really interesting team.
Yeah, Cody Kessler actually looked really good. I mean, the Titans did sack him 6 times, but they had kind of a makeshift line, and he did really well.
He'll probably be in the market. Depending on who's out there, they'll be on the market for a quarterback as early as this year. But
And their offensive weapons are a bunch of rookies. Terrell Pryor, who kind of is a rookie, and Gary Barnidge, who did nothing until last year. So it's actually – he did really well. He pretty much hit every pass he threw on the target. There were a few drops that actually cut him. But it's funny. I was talking to the guy behind me. It's like, you can't stop Cody Kessler. You can only hope to contain him because he would somehow get out of a sack and make a play at the end. And it was kind of impressive. But probably, although I will be actually starting him in the league because I have Cam Newton and nothing else this week for the bye. But I do want to we did pour one out last week. Charlie Whitehurst, Tablet Jesus saying goodbye. Well, this week's pour one out. Vincent Jackson tore his ACL in practice. Are you kidding me? I remember drafting him as a rookie in a dynasty league and having him as like a throw-in a trade I made that the other guy did pretty well. But he's been around a long time, made a lot of money for a Northern Colorado guy. So here's Adam Humphries, right?
He was a good player for a lot of years. He was perennially underrated as a fantasy wide receiver too for many, many years. But Vincent Jackson's been declining now for a good solid 2 or 3 years. So, the end of the road is pretty much upon us with him. And there are just a ton of injuries, especially to running backs this week. Even today, it was like, man, I went for a 7-mile bike ride. I've started doing that as my cardio after I work out. And, I came home. It was like Carlos Hyde's out. Doug Martin's out. I'm like, what? How long was I riding? It was only like 35 minutes. Man, it's been a rough week.
I thought Zach was going to pour one out for Fitz Magic tragedy.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, was it Tuesday? They were like, he's going to start, and then like, nah, Geno Smith. So speaking of our favorite league, the Scott Fish Bowl, Geno Smith's going to go for some medium bucks this week if somebody hasn't picked him up already.
Give credit to the Jets for completely refusing to give this guy a long-term answer. And how could you? I don't think anyone with any knowledge of Ryan Fitzpatrick's lengthy career as a journeyman bouncing from team to team. I think we all knew that 2015 was an anomaly and that he would return to the same quarterback that he's always generally been. And it wasn't really a surprise. So, for the Jets, I'm glad that they held their ground and got him in for a reasonable 1-year deal. And now they can move on and start over next year at quarterback, which is, something they desperately needed to do anyway, unless they think they can.
Well, they've got 4 on their roster, so,
Christian Hackenberg, which nobody seems to think that that's possible. So the Jets are going nowhere at 1-5. They're suffering injuries. Matt Forte started off with a couple of big games, and I think we all saw what was about to happen there. You're talking about a 31-year-old Matt Forte who has over 2,500 career touches, and I said as soon as he started off really hot, this is not going to last. He can't. It's just, and it's been a rough month for the Jets, but it sounds like they've made a decision to move on and kind of maybe see what they have with Geno and turn the page.
They have some real rebuilding to do on an offensive skill position because all their guys are old. Like they've drafted, it seems like nothing but defense the past 5 years, and so they have they end up with 7 really good defensive linemen.
Running backs 30-31.
Darrelle Revis is.
Brandon Marshall was around the same age. Darrelle Revis is starting to show his age. Yeah, absolutely. It's and the Jets. I mean, they basically don't have tight ends. They're not a part of anything on their offensive line. So they've got some their offense certainly has some rebuilding to do, and I think that's what we'll see them probably start focusing on pretty soon here in their draft.
Yeah, I guess we have to start figuring out how many actual good quarterbacks are in next year's draft, because they're quite a.
It's supposed to be a pretty good draft. I mean, you guys are just as involved in fantasy football as I am. Well, maybe not as involved, but I know you're as smart at it and both spend a lot of time on it. So all the dynasty people, man, they really, really like this draft coming up in 2017. In my college, I'm limited to making sure I always watch the last 5 minutes of before kickoff, so I can watch Corso. I like when he trolls the local fans by putting on their little suit, their little hat, and then throwing it on the ground and picking up the opposition. That's my favorite. Even my wife thinks that's funny, but
I don't know.
I don't have a lot of time to devote to college. I mean, I do like to watch it on Saturdays, but Sunday's a wash. For me, I mean, it's wake up at 7 a.m. and it's nonstop for 15 hours of rankings and football, answering Twitter questions, doing live chats, etc. So Saturday becomes yard work, go somewhere with my son and do stuff like that. So, and I'm a Longhorns guy, so their season's over. So rather than suffer through that all season, you kind of just move on. And
what are they going to do about Charlie Strong? What do you think they should do about Charlie Strong?
Yeah, you've got to move on. He's it's just not working. He has done a pretty good job recruiting, but he's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, and their defense is atrocious. I mean, we've seen them really Texas. The opening win when they beat Notre Dame, when back then Notre Dame was a top 10 team, which obviously was a farce. But everyone thought that they're back, and then their defense just kept hemorrhaging points. They went out to UCLA and lost, and then they lost to Oklahoma. It's got to be the end of the road. There's some big-name coaches that are potential gets for them. They could look at Les Miles, and Tom Herman here at the University of Houston is the big name. But all these schools, there's going to be a lot of big openings in college for football coaches. You're talking Notre Dame potentially. LSU's already going to be an opening. And then Texas is probably going to be an opening, and there's other schools. So it's going to be hard for UH, unfortunately, to keep Tom Herman because he's going to be so highly coveted as a coach, and they're going to be able to throw out the money. And what's frustrating is, here locally, the Big 12 made their asinine decision to not to expand, which you would think in the name Big 12, but you would actually want to be 12 schools. But they stupidly said, they got money from TV networks not to do it. So at this point, that kind of, to me, that sealed Tom Herman's fate. I mean, now UH has no viable, right now, no viable entry into a big conference. So it's almost impossible for them to keep a coach. They can't pay them like LSU or like the University of Texas or Notre Dame or et cetera could. So unfortunately, UH looks like in the short term, they're going to remain kind of a stepping stone type school. And it's unfortunate because here in Houston, they've done a good job of rebuilding that program and putting in some really, really nice facilities. I've seen a game over there. It's great. And it's just sad that that's the business side of it has to come in. But to me, the Big 12 has kind of sealed its own fate. And when their TV deal and all that stuff comes up, I think it's 2025, the Big 12 is done. It's going to cease to exist, and they'll have nobody to blame but themselves.
It's been such a weird marriage because I was a Missouri guy back on their Big 8, and really the addition of the Texas schools always seemed like an odd marriage. Like the southern part of the Big 12 got more money than the North, and it was always an equitable kind of situation. Like in the SEC, everybody gets the same amount of money, but in the Big 12, it was like, no, Texas gets more,
that seems like
Oklahoma gets more, and it's like,
doesn't it seem fair that Vanderbilt?
I know it's about
the same amount of money
football,
as
but you got to have all these schools kind of on even footing. And it was funny that Nebraska left and Missouri basically lost out to Nebraska to go to the Big Ten, and then their consolation prize is the SEC. Their consolation prize also is getting the crap beat out of them in football now. It was a nice 2-year run, but it's not looking so good. I'm kind of I feel like 50-50. I feel about the same about Missouri against MTSU as I did Titans Browns. So we'll see how that goes. But was it nice as a Texans guy to kind of see the reverse in an Andrew Luck game? Because usually Andrew Luck's the guy making the dramatic comeback. And this week the Texans made that big comeback that I don't think anybody was expecting, because I think everybody had already gone to sleep by the time it happened. But, hey, they pulled it off.
I'll tell you what, I made the mistake of putting out a tweet of – I updated. I said, with this loss, Houston is now, I think it's like 8-22 in primetime games, and it's something really atrocious. And I kind of turned it, and I started getting all these tweets, and I got not so fast, my friend, and some LOLs, and you shouldn't have turned it, or you shouldn't have said that. But I kept it up for a few days. I was like, listen, I'm accountable when I say something. I also put that my tweet, I take some credit for it. My tweet motivated the team, and they came back from winning. But I have to admit that I did fall asleep in between the C.J. Fedorowicz touchdown and overtime. This is a thing where I woke up some 30 to 45 minutes later, and the post-game show was on, and they were talking about it. You know what? Now that I mention it, I know that Indy got the opening kick in overtime. So I must have fallen asleep around that time, and I didn't see the end of it. And I'm glad they won, but.
So speaking of quarterback, I just saw the Josh Brown.
Here we go.
Just saw the Josh Brown news scrolling across my Twitter feed. Maybe we'll talk about that at the end. Speaking of quarterback situations, Jody, Tom Savage. Is it Tom Savage time yet?
Oh, no. Financially, they're committed a minimum of 2 years to Brock Osweiler, and they're not going to sit him. I couldn't possibly see them sitting Brock Osweiler this year. Maybe next year, if he plays terribly, they can just decide, all right. But it's written in the contract. No matter what, it's a 2-year deal. So he's going to get that, if he doesn't get hurt, I'm guessing he's going to get 32 starts, and
at this point, I think
it's a little early to make the assumptions that it's not going to work out. But
I think Nuke and Will Fuller might pile drive him.
Problem
I know some fantasy football owners might.
The problem for DeAndre Hopkins is that he held out for 1 day. Sharona, you and I talked about the whole going to Texans camp, and I was, I asked you some questions about that. But the first day he wasn't there. He showed up the second day. But so it was kind of a warning shot. Hey, I'm concerned about my deal because his rookie contract expires after next year. So there's some interesting things that can happen, I guess, at the end of 2017 for Houston. But honestly, I think it's a little early to start making the assumptions that Brock Osweiler simply can't play. He's shown some flashes here and there, and obviously there's some things he could do better. But I prefer to look at it, as the glass half full thing. Like I said, it's done. It's going to be 2 years. As long as he stays healthy, I'm assuming it's 32 starts. We're 6 starts into it, so let's relax a little bit. And I'm not going to foolishly think that I think the Texans can go to Denver and win, but I wouldn't be shocked if they keep it close. Last year we had written off Houston, and it wasn't going well for them. And they went to Cincinnati. I think it was on a Monday Night Football game, and they won that game, and it kind of turned things around. It became a catalyst for them to really start to recover and move on. There was some Super Bowl excitement, I think, here in Houston early on, but with the way Brock has played and considering that J.J. Watt has done and the way that Lamar Miller had, some disappointing weeks before he broke out against the Colts, that the Super Bowl, hoping to have that first home team to play in their own stadium for the Super Bowl, that's kind of disappeared here. And we're Houston, and I know, Zach, I know you can relate to what it's like to be a disgruntled Atlanta type of sports fan, but we're paranoid here in Houston. We can't have nice things. Since the Rockets won 2 championships, which was all simply based on Hakeem Olajuwon, basically by himself, and some timely shots by Robert Ory, we can't have nice things here. It's been nothing but close calls and just miserable failures. And we know all those Houston Oilers, those depressing losses that actually led you guys to have your favorite football team. It's that kind of thing that can end up.
It's kind of
killing a fan base. But what it does is it just Houston, and I've heard this about Atlanta too, but Houston is known for being a fair weather sports team, and it really is. And like even me, I'm wearing an Astros hat right now. No team makes me angrier than the Astros. When they're not playing well, I turn it off, and I get down by 2 or 3 runs. Your team, and I just turn it off because the anger it actually makes me mad and angry for the day, and that boils over into my home life and my son's being loud, and I snap at him quicker than I normally would. And when you become a obsessive sports fan, that's the fun of it, but it's also the negative to it. You have to be able to take a step back and.
Hey, get this, guys. If I'm looking at the NFL standings, if I'm looking at them correctly, if the playoffs were next week, the Titans would be one of the wild card teams at 3.
Is that right? At 3 and 3,
rough this year.
Let's see off the top of my head. You can.
They are. You got in second place in each division. You got a 4-2. No, wait, I'm wrong. They would be third in line. They've got the 4-2 Bills, and the 4-2 Broncos would be there. And so
the Raiders are 4-2. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Raiders lead the Raiders would win their division, AFC West division. I'm sorry, they would be next in line. We've got the Bills at 4-2 and the Broncos at 4-2, and then next would come the Ravens and the Titans. And the Titans, because of how it's calculated, would be a little. They're both 500 teams that are 500. But this one stat puts them just a little bit above the Ravens. But it's kind of interesting. The AFC is pretty wide open. Of course, you've got the Patriots at 5-1. Who's going to get, But the Texans 4-2. They'll have to come to Nashville to face the Titans for that second game, and it's interesting.
It's kind of insane that. As someone who covered or was at Chiefs games in the late 80s and the early 90s. So the Chiefs
coming up on Tennessee's schedule. Let's see. You got
they have the Colts.
Two games with the Jaguars.
Two
games with the Colts.
Chargers.
2 games with the Colts. 2 games with the Jaguars. Those are winnable. Chargers are on the schedule. The Bears. You got some tough ones. The Broncos and the Chiefs are on there. The Packers.
I think they can beat the Packers this year. The Packers stink. Hey. They're awful.
Hey, absolutely. I don't see any reason why the Titans can't be, can't be right up there around 500, maybe a game above, maybe a game below, but that certainly would put them in the conversation.
They might actually end up winning the division. The division is still
they're built to be a playoff type team. They're a defensive team that's really good at running the ball, and I don't see any reason. It's no reason. Obviously, to me, I'm a Titans fan. If you guys are Titans, you should probably be actually happy. They seem to.
I am. Well, that's what we love having.
They've exceeded expectations from. I think with Malarkey, they kind of thought, this is a stepping stone, and next year we'll have a new coach and all that. But hey, you know what? Maybe they've figured things out. And like I said, this is certainly, as we've seen here in Houston, we know that it's a very winnable division.
They're halfway to the win total that I said fans and people should expect, and that was 6-10. Mm-hmm. They have been a 2-win football team for the past couple of years. Mm-hmm. They've not been a good football team, and if they win 6-7 games, that's a successful season. I know fans don't want to hear that because
Great trade for Murray. He's really been, really revitalized this season.
A lot better than I expected.
Derrick Henry played 9 snaps last week. That's a good.
It's crazy. Yeah.
I know your guy. I kind of posted on Twitter. I was like, well, maybe if the Titans take a lead, they'll give him the ball in the second half. But last week against the Dolphins, Henry didn't get a touch in the second half, and he didn't get too many touches last week. Although when they do shotgun, it seems like Henry's a better choice than Murray, but they don't do that very often. So there you go. But I was about to bring up the fact that the Chiefs' last playoff win before last year was against the Oilers in Houston, and then they beat them in Houston.
Kansas City has had Houston's number for a little while here.
That will not be repeated for a while. Although I suppose whoever beats the Las Vegas Raiders in the playoffs in about 5 years,
Well, the Royals, the Astros had the Royals on the verge 2 years ago, or last season. They had they were up, I think, 2-1 in the divisional round, and they had a 5-run lead in the 8th inning, and they blew it. It's because it's Houston. Of course, we blew it. But the Royals went on, and I don't think they lost the game the rest of the season. And then, like you mentioned, the two Chiefs playoff losses here. So, yeah, the Kansas City, I mean, if you're a sports fan, you got to see Houston on this coach. You got to be like, all right, that's a bye week. That's already in the bank. That's a win.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was working at McDonald's in college when they won that game, and that was the Joe Montana, like his last run.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Montana, and I think Marcus Allen was on that team, and I don't know if that was the Christian McCoy era, one of the greatest running backs who never made a cut in his whole career.
That was that Oilers thing that was that interesting ESPN did that's the 30 for 30, or they did an hour-long special where they talked about how I think the Oilers had gone, they won like their final 8 or 9 games. They were 12-4, House of Pain. They were hurting people in the Astrodome, just killing people. And, and Joe Montana came, and that kind of that and the Denver the drive in Denver that John Elway went and beat the Oilers. Those were the two, like the nails in the coffin. But in particular, that loss to Joe Montana, that was kind of like, hey, we were just tired of Bud Adams at that point, and him threatening to leave and take his team to Jacksonville and this and that. At that point, people were like, all right, we're done.
And it really got personal between the city and Bud Adams and all of that.
He had them take out that cool scoreboard in the Astrodome, so he wanted more seats, and then that wasn't good enough. And right after they finally did that for him, he started wanting more, and I think people got tired of it, which was interesting because then they lost the Oilers, and the Astros owner Drayton McClain did the same thing. He asked for changes in a new stadium and all that, and he got what he wanted. But Adams, once they did actually, like, in my personal opinion, cities should not be spending taxpayer millions and billions of dollars to support a pro sports team like the city of Austin. Texas is a very red state. It's very Republican here. Austin is like a blue star in the middle of Houston. They don't put up with it. Austin is the largest populated city in the country that has no professional sports teams. It's because there's no way that the population in Austin would support their own money and think to support some pro market sports team. And I mean, here's who is it right now that's talking about the Texas Rangers? Here's Arlington. They want like $1.6 billion, whatever, for a new stadium. It's just and the ownership of the Rangers has got these loopholes where the city's not even really getting like their money and revenue back from parking and other such amenities that you see the city get reimbursed. And it's like, why are taxpayers basically putting more money in the pockets of these billionaires? I don't understand
it's crazy. Well, Arlington is where Jerry World is.
Yeah, it's it's kind of not necessarily an outskirt of Dallas, but it's it's in the area. To us in Houston, again, we're paranoid of Dallas in particular. And the Rangers, I think the Rangers, like in the last 2 years with the Astros, the Rangers in the last 2 years against the Astros, and this is a fact, they're like 105-1 against the Astros in the last 2 years. That's a fact. You can look it up. But it just adds to the paranoia because we have to deal with all these. I don't know if we've talked about this before, but Houston, the first few years of the Texans, they had an open policy in the parking lot. Now, remember, Houston is considered the best tailgating city in the NFL. They used to open,
you don't want to get me started.
They used to open the gates for the Reliant area for anybody to tailgate before the game. And then, of course, you'd have to have your ticket to get into the game. Well, it was the last time Dallas came to Houston, and there were so many fights between Texan and Cowboys fans. It got so out of control that from that day forward, they started a new policy where you can no longer tailgate in Reliant. You can't get into the stadium parking lot or nothing without game tickets because you have this ridiculous amount. And my older brother, he's older than me enough to where he grew up with when the Cowboys were winning those championships and going to the Super Bowl in the late 70s. They had Tony Dorsett, Danny White, Randy White, Ed Too Tall Jones, all these late Cowboys. I grew up in the same room with them, so I knew all of them, even though I didn't care. I don't remember what my point was, but you just have this whole inferiority thing because Dallas has won all 5 Super Bowls, and even on my Facebook, it's just all the time. It's just person between obnoxious Cowboy fan and a paranoid, insecure Houston fan, and most of the time, most people in Dallas are like, "Oh, Houston, yeah, a little town down there, it's cool, and we ain't got no problem with it." And here in Houston, we're more insecure about it's an inferiority thing.
Well, I found out the hard way that Houston was probably never ever going to forgive Bud Adams, and the thing about tailgating at Reliant and all of that. I mean, I've got stories, and it's kind of funny to me. But back to your original point, yeah, I mean, I agree, and that the NFL and that these owners would do that, especially asking the military, the pay for patriotism thing, the military thing.
Oh, patriotism!
I mean,
Patriotism for
immoral.
profit. To me, look, you see these reports of this declining fan base on TV for the NFL. You knew that the bubble was going to burst.
Yeah. Well, Mark Cuban called it, 3 years ago? 2 years ago?
Come on. I mean, we all kind of saw it coming. I'm going to be honest. The NFL owes a huge portion of its popularity and success to fantasy football, because if fantasy football hadn't grown to the leaps and bounds it has, it just wouldn't be a popular. There would not be a red zone channel. There would not be all these thousands of people, millions of people interested in the draft and all that thing. It just wouldn't be. Everyone would be at home at noon or 1 p.m. Eastern for their own home city game, and you wouldn't be interested in the San Francisco 49ers or Seattle Seahawks, Arizona Cardinals, Kansas City Chiefs. But with fantasy, you're interested in all 32 teams potentially, and the league in general. You're reading Roto World, you're reading Gridiron Experts, you're reading whatever sites you've got. You want to keep up with all these news, and
some of it's gambling too. I mean, it's kind of tied up in fantasy football. Fantasy football likes to pretend that it's not tied to gambling and all of that, but it is. Sort of kind of is.
Of course it is. It's all gambling. It's in our nature as people to want to take risk and Goes
back to the gladiators, and even probably even before that.
Even things like hunting, it's an instinctual thing where we're out there for that thrill and for that rush, and with gambling, it's the same thing. And I think eventually you're going to have to see. The NFL is going to have to be a little more open-minded and accepting of gambling because, in certain ways, the NFL acts like they're not that interested in fantasy and they want to make things hard. Like, wasn't they trying to fight it? Like, we don't think that these sites should be using our players' names and images and whatnot for free. But I think they realized that was kind of a losing battle, so they kind of, hushed that.
They backed away from that, but now they're trying to enforce this whole not letting teams tweet.
That was my favorite part of this weekend, where the team they
Eagles
were doing like electric football replays of highlights because they weren't allowed to show them during the game because I don't know, social media in the NFL. That actually brings up a good point. Like, maybe that's why I don't like going to the games as much, because the Titans usually lose. And the fact that if you're at one game, you cannot be connected with the other games. It's just hard to do.
Zach,
Like they're way behind on like showing highlights. They're better than they used to be, but they don't really do that very much. And they added Wi-Fi like last year. Like really took them that long to get Wi-Fi. But I'm in the lower section, so I can't send tweets. I can't check anything unless I'm up a little higher up. Grabbing a beverage or something.
Well, let's say
because I still don't know what happened in half of the games this weekend because I was at the Titans game.
Well, let's say you're a fancy football fan. You like to keep track of your teams and you want to know what's going on. Now you can sit at home on your couch watching the Red Zone channel all Sunday for free, or whatever portion of that day's cable bill is, or you can go to the stadium. And now you can drive. I mean, let's say you want, like Zach, like you said, good seats. Well, you're going to spend, $150 for a good seat, and you're going to pay $20 to $50 to park. And then you're going to get there, and I don't know if this is true at every stadium, but in Houston, you're not going to have any cell signal at all. No internet and nothing. Now, I've heard it's improved, but in my experiences, nothing. Okay, so now you don't know what's going on, and then all you can see is maybe a scoreboard in the corner just updating scores. It doesn't mean you know who scored, what's going on in that game. You just know that, man, the Bears have been stuck on 13 for like 2 hours here. What's going on? I started Matt Forte, I know he's gone, but just saying. So you already have that, and then, like I said, you've already dropped. Let's say you want to have, some soda or two. You hit on, Zach, earlier that it was $9.50 for a long, whatever.
$10.
It's $8.50 for Bud Light.
More than that. Now, I don't know about you guys, but once you've had, that first one or two sodas, you start to get a little like, what sounds good? It's a hell of a lot more soda. Well, that gets a hell of a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And before you know it, you've gone. You don't know what's going on in any of the rest of the games. You're stuck there, and if you're watching Red Zone Channel, there are no TV timeouts. But if you're at home and there's a commercial break, get up, use the restroom, go get a snack, stretch your legs, go do whatever, go check the mail. In the stadium, you're doing nothing. You're sitting there watching nothing, and it happens all the time. My favorite is when they go to commercial break, and then they do a kickoff, and then they go to another commercial. And it's a touchback. Come on.
There's like a guy on the sideline who has Kevin Mitts who tells everybody, "Whoop, timeout." Yeah.
Timeout with 2 minutes and 1 second left. 6 minutes of commercials. Incomplete pass. 2-minute warning. 6 more minutes of commercials. I mean, you're in a stadium. That's terrible. Especially if it's an open air stadium and it's still September and it's so hot. I mean.
Yeah, and then you got the whole if it's a family thing, not only are you dropping $250 per person, and then you got the poor mom who has to try to carry in those stupid clear plastic bags that they make you
so tiny.
Well, if you have like a toddler or diaper age kid that you got to bring in all that stuff, and it's just the point. Honestly, you're a family of four. How do you go and you're making $50,000-$60,000 a year? You're barely scraping by. How are you supposed to justify spending hundreds of dollars to go see a product that, quite frankly, is just so much better at home on an HD television on your couch where it's free?
Yeah, and then you got that added thing. The product's not very good right now. Outside of the actual team play, the officiating stinks. And there's just so much. I don't know how the NFL.
We don't even know what a freaking catch is.
I know, right?
Do you know what a catch is, Sharona?
No, nobody.
No, of course not, because nobody does. It's every game. There's a replay where we have to go to the thing, and the expert says, well, this is obviously a catch, and then they overturn it. Like, what?
Yeah, pass interference, the same thing. They don't know.
God. Yeah,
holding. They don't call anything consistently.
That huge, the huge one now is that whole Atlanta and Seattle type thing where it looked pretty blatant to everyone watching TV. But what was the recourse for the Falcons? They couldn't do anything. And bless the Falcons. They played that game hard. They went to Denver and won, and they almost went to Seattle. And Matt Ryan looked great, and they almost won that game. And unfortunately, because of that opinion, they had no recourse. So there needs to be some. There needs to be some rules. What's annoying to me is every time a wide receiver in particular is running like a slant or an out route out of bounds, whatever, every time the ball is incomplete, they're looking for the flag. They're like, to me, that's just.
I think if a receiver does that whole like gestation for flag, it should be like nullified. Sorry.
I mean, what's funny?
Usually the flag's already flown before he's made a move. But
what percentage of fans would actually prefer to see touchdown celebrations, dances, and all that? Some personality when people score. You remember when Chad Johnson had all these different things? It was great. I thought it was so entertaining.
Speaking of the Hollywood Henderson and the Cowboys, Michael Irvin, they really kind of brought that. Billy White, White Shoes
Johnson, Houston.
Yeah. They really kind of brought all of that into the game, and now it's
every fan loves it and wants to see it, but no, can't have it.
We love our reality shows so much, and like shows like The Voice. Why don't we have like a 3-team panel, and after every celebration, they do the thumbs up or thumbs down. They do the thumbs up, no penalty. The thumbs down, all right, you get a 15-yard penalty. Something like even like throw some fans out there and just do that, because it would be. It'd be like, all right, you can come up with the good stuff. Like the Rams did their little team dance, and Washington used to do the the fun bunch kind of stuff.
Well, 3 officials should be able to vote, and if two of them think that the celebration sucked, they throw a flag 15 yards. Hey, come on, man.
Odell Beckham in the kicking thing.
Either do what Andrew Hawkins did a couple weeks ago in Cleveland, and just set the ball down like a robot and walk off the field, or if you're going to celebrate, make it count. Do the popcorn from T.O. thing. Joe Horn with the cell phone. That was a good one. Show me some personality, something unique, or get the flag.
Or maybe they should just have a spot like on the team's sideline. Like you run from the end zone to that spot, and you're like, it's a safe zone. Like when you're a little kid and you can't get, you can't.
I'm kind of glad they outlawed the dunk over the goalpost. That was kind of tired. So
I miss that for the Jimmy Graham era. Now that he's back.
Yeah, he resurrected.
Jimmy Graham, it's sad to think of all the guys had 0 shares of him.
I own him so many leagues. So I'm happy to see that he's become relevant again. I wasn't excited mainly because of the team and the role, but I thought he was a really good value in September and before September on all draft. I thought, man, Jimmy Graham's still sitting here. It's like round 12, 13, and my favorite strategy, last year was to just ignore tight end altogether until round 12 and just take Jason Witten. Because most leagues are, PPR leagues, and Jason Witten has kind of underperformed what I thought, but he's still been okay. Yeah. He still gets your, 4 to 6 catches every game, and I don't know. I just didn't. I don't own too many tight ends other than Jimmy Graham, Jason Witten, Travis Kelce, somebody that I was interested in about the 6th or 7th round. My dream job okay, you guys know I've been in fantasy a long time, and to me, Fantasy Football Index, what it was originally called, was the first. That was the Bible to us. We called it the Bible. It's the only magazine that I still go out of my way to find and to buy this year. But one of my dreams when I started writing in 2011 was to finally get into Fantasy Index, and that actually happened this year. I contacted Ian Allen, and I got to participate in the experts poll. I got to write for them. I got to be in their league, and it was great. But one of the things I decided to do to differentiate myself was I named Travis Kelce as my number 2 tight end. So I have a vested interest in him, doing well. And for a while, he actually was the number 2 tight end. I don't believe he is anymore. I'm talking standard, but
well, the Titans.
Yeah, that was.
The Titans broke Delaney Walker, and I'm not ever going to forgive them for it.
I saw, Delaney was coming off the field a lot.
Very big disappointment last week.
Yeah, unfortunately, my Scott Fish Bowl strategy was to draft a lot of tight ends, so I got Barnage, Kelsey, Reed, who of course had a concussion last week, and then Walker. So it was like, ooh boy.
It's funny, Zach, that you mentioned that. In my Scott Fishbowl team, I have Travis Kelsey, my guy, and I have Jimmy Graham. And Jack Doyle was somebody else I added later. So my Scott Fishbowl team, it's okay. I'm 4-2. I'm like, top 100 or so in scoring. I'm trending towards being a playoff team, but it's not exciting yet. Running backs are weak. Scott Barrett, Pro Football Focus, my boy, he just gobbled up a lot of running backs in that league, and he was able to beat me a couple weeks ago pretty handily with a big production. And my team was more like a nice wide receiver PPR team, which was kind of not the direction to go in the Scott Fishbowl. But
see, my wide receivers Nuke killed me early on. Amari Cooper's been killing me. Odell Beckham Jr. until the last couple of games was killing me. It's
not
just
last week.
Well, no, not last week.
Cooper's been good the last 2 weeks, but Hopkins, and you got to expect another subpar game from him this week, going against Aqib Talib in Denver. I think my initial
that's the thing.
You can't. That makes it hard, Sharona, as you know. You just got to trot these guys out. What if someone got cute after 5 slow Odell Beckham games and got cute and said, you know what, I'm going to start this, insert some, hot PPR guy instead of Odell Beckham. What happened? 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, all basically in the second half. You just have to do it. Even with who has a legitimate enough roster where they can consider sitting DeAndre Hopkins for option. I don't want to hear about Cameron Meredith. I know this guy's come out of nowhere, and he's been good for 2 weeks, but that's too cute.
Let me tell you my wide receivers in one league, and I almost did it. I had Nuke, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyrell Williams, did I have Amari Cooper? No, I don't think I have Amari. Let me pull this up. Larry Fitzgerald. I was playing the young guys, and here old-ass Larry Fitzgerald is lighting up the field, and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? I mean, it was awful.
Yeah, this was the best, though. I'm playing my dad last week, and I was losing by like 10 points, and I started Larry Fitzgerald, and after the first quarter, I was losing by 1 point. And he made one catch like in the fourth quarter, and that put me over the edge. I had the lowest margin of victory of the year. I beat my dad by 1.18 points thanks to Larry Fitzgerald, and it's awesome because my dad's a Pitt grad, and maybe Larry is at this point because he came out
at that point for 2 quarters, half the game you sat there.
Yeah, I was like,
zero.
I'm actually watching this Cardinals Jets monstrosity.
I'm going to lose this freaking game, aren't I?
Well, actually, in the Scott Fishbowl, it was like July 4th. I took Ezekiel Elliott number 2, and that was good.
That's paid off nicely.
Ezekiel Elliott, LeGarrette Blount. I drafted a bunch of tight ends and a bunch of mid-level receivers who mostly done good. Sadly, Will Fuller, every week I start him, he sucks. Every week I don't, he does well. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. Is he going to be playing this week against Minnesota? Is that happening?
All right. I have DeAndre.
It sounds like he's going to play against Denver, yes.
Here are my wide receivers. I've got DeAndre Hopkins, Odell Beckham Jr., Larry Fitzgerald, Amari Cooper, Jamison Crowder, and Tyrell Williams.
Jamison.
That sounds like a pretty solid team.
Yeah, but, I'm like sweating Newt going, should I sit him? I mean, these other guys are producing and stuff, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And I actually was able to pick up Zach's favorite, Bobby Rainey, and I had Terrence West.
Bobby Rainey. I get you a Bobby Rainey jersey.
You should. I'm so thankful. I had Terrence West, and I held on to him, and he's awesome now, and so that's good. Giovanni Bernard, huge disappointment, except for maybe one game, and so Delaney. I've got Delaney Walker. This is the league that I had. Marcus Mariota was my backup quarterback, and I've got Tyrod Taylor, who's been. And I dropped him and picked up. I dropped him and picked up Carson Wentz, and of course he's sucked it up the last couple of weeks. So it's like, what I mean.
I actually picked up Colin Kaepernick in our
Yahoo
league. That's how down I am in the dumps.
I'm 4-2 in that league, so I'm doing all right. What am I in our going for 2 Yahoo league? Let me look it up.
I beat my dad. I've been having low scoring wins. So Jody, in your long-standing league, is it still touchdown only?
Yep.
So the
Sadly,
guy who had Lamar Miller didn't score any points till this week.
that's right.
Basically,
He had 0 point. Well, what about
Wow.
you? Remember the Julio Jones? I have Julio Jones in that league. That 300-yard game. I scored 6 points off of it because he scored 1 touchdown. And if he hadn't have scored, we've had that happen before where guys have gone for 150, 200 yards and it's been worth nothing in our league. And that, it's just a way of it. It's not going to change. The guys that are in our league are, pretty much dead set against changing it. And, even the newer guys are like, you know what? Nah, I kind of like it. It's an interesting and different challenge. And
Yeah,
that
I think
aspect of it's just not
every
gonna change.
fantasy football league has its randomness, and you just have to accept it. And it has its weird rules. Scott Fishbowl has like the 0.25 per carry kind of thing, which weighs
that was
things.
Scott's intention to,
And tight ends get
even things
a point
up.
per catch versus 0.5, I think, and that's why but
The whole
tight
point
ends
of that
were
was to
mediocre.
try to make. The whole point of that was for Scott to try to balance running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends because, as we know, in PPR leagues, to catch meaningless 3 to 6 yard passes can become very, very valuable players. Only in fantasy football could some irrelevant running back like Danny Woodhead be the number 3 running back, and that's the problem to me with PPR leagues is that Danny Woodhead is a replaceable level running back in real football. He's just like, he's good. He's decent. He's great. Good teammate or whatnot. But in fantasy football, he's a number 3 running back, and you can just have these lousy receivers come out of nowhere and just become relevant. And to me, that's the whole problem with PPR. It became prominent when looking at the late 90s to early 2000s when running backs were dominating everything. Look at LaDainian Tomlinson. The guy was fantastic. So it was just an effort from smarter people to even things out to make wide receivers more relevant. But the pro football game has changed so much. The rule changes are all in favor of offenses, and these wide receivers are so much bigger, stronger, faster than they ever were before. So to me, people need to actually start to think, hey, football's changed. This is why wide receivers are to me are too valuable. They're scoring too much. We need to actually start thinking, outside the box. I don't know if it's to go to two quarterback leagues or maybe to point per carry, something like that. Because now teams are shifting running backs in and out of their lineups to where you can't even get running backs anymore, and these wide receivers are 6'5", 230 pounds, and are running 4 threes. It's just nuts, and I don't know. To me, I've learned to embrace PPR because that's what the vast majority of people go with, but it doesn't mean I like it. There's a handful of us. Andy Behrens from Yahoo, Jake Seeley, and myself. We're 3 of the biggest bashers of PPR that are in the football community, mainly because the 3 of us are kind of old school guys, but at the same time we just see that the inequity of it where it just doesn't seem fair.
I suck in Scotty Fishbowl, by the way. I'm 2-4, but I'm 4-2 in just about every other league. So
what's weird? Let me tell you what the last 2 weeks.
The last 2 weeks for me personally. Happy birthday to Scott Fish. He's a Scott Fish Bowl and the King of the Hill, which I was dominating, and now not so much.
Happy birthday, you magnificent bastard! I see your screen share there. It's been weird for me. Like the last 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks have been completely contrasting. Where 2 weeks ago, I won in my Elvis Football League, Zach, that you just brought up, my home league that was founded in 1991, and I pretty much lost everywhere else. But week 6 was the exact opposite. I lost in my home league, but I won everywhere else. Everything else, Scott Fishbowl, every other league I'm in, had a good week, and I won. So it was like, 1-7 and 7-1. I guess if you add them together, I'm just mediocre. But you guys already knew that.
And you could win the AFC South. And you got Pumpkinator. I gotta find something because I haven't gotten hold of the local pumpkin porter that's supposedly good.
On Twitter, I saw that somebody in New Orleans had some Pumpkinator, so it's gotten a little bit closer to you. I'm sure it doesn't get much further east than that, but
You're probably like me, like all the local beer places. I follow them on Twitter, and anytime they get rare beers, I get tweets, and I decide whether to run over there. And I, ran over there today, and they didn't have anything too special, but I got to find something that's up your alley. They have some local IPAs you'd like.
Fortunately for you, Zach, you've got a Pumpkinator connection, so I'm sure we can make some magic happen.
I love that beer magic. Yeah. So
you're
in Houston. You're not that far from the beach. Do you go to the beach pretty often, or not so much?
Actually, I live in League City, which is almost exactly geographically halfway between Houston and Galveston. If I'm not mistaken, it's 25 miles from downtown Houston and 26 miles from Galveston. So, I mean, really, it's like right there. So, yeah, I'm actually in Galveston all the time. I travel down there pretty frequently for my other job and do some stuff. But with me being a pasty pale redhead, and my wife being a pasty pale redhead, magically our kid is a pasty pale redhead.
Aww.
So it's hard for us to go down there and enjoy a thing. And now this year there was some talk of there being, flesh-eating bacteria in the water or whatever.
Oh God, no way.
So we didn't go down there. But like 2 years ago, my son Brandon was really, really excited and interested about birds, so I really embraced that. And I bought bird crap, bird seeds, bird poles. I got bird houses everywhere, and I actually started getting really into it. So now to this day, I really like birds. But so one time we took him down to the office and said, "Hey, let's throw some bread to the seagulls," and he just thought it was the greatest thing in the world. But we do go down there pretty frequently. It has been probably 3 years since we intended to go to Corpus Christi this year and go to the beach, but it didn't work out. We had some rain, and believe it or not, when the first time my son was, we went down there. He was about 2 or 3. He's 8 now, but it was the first time my wife in her life had gotten into an ocean, a natural body of water like that. And I was like, "Oh, why didn't you go as kids?" And she just said, "Well, my parents wouldn't let us." And I'm just like, man, that's crazy to me. When you live this close to the coast, you take it for granted. To me, I've worked and traveled with people, and I've taken them to Galveston, and they're like stopping and taking pictures with their phone of the Gulf of Mexico. I'm like, what are you doing? Oh, my wife would like to see this. I've seen it hundreds or more times, so you take it for granted. But other people, I guess, don't live as close to the. To me personally, I don't see how maybe and Galveston has a more positive reputation around the rest of the country than people think. They're like, "Oh man, I want to check out the beach in Galveston." To us, it's brownish water, unfortunately, because of the Gulf of Mexico, the Mississippi River. It's a lot of silt. It's not the most pristine beach. To us, it's maybe again, like I said, you just take it for granted. It's just not a novelty to us. We're just kind of like, Galveston. I might go there tomorrow, actually. I had some stuff I need to take care of, and maybe I'll be Pumpkinator hunting. Who knows?
Yeah, well, I'm driving to Panama City tomorrow. My sister-in-law is getting married. Of course, it's UT's bye week, so that's why that's happening. Although they're actually getting married on Friday, which makes sense because we're only staying until Sunday. So today I had to stock up on my canned beer for the beach. But the best part about the place we stay at is they have a big gazebo right outside the condos, and it's outside the beach. And we go there, and it's shaded, and it's great because I am pasty as well. Not quite the redhead, the ginger. Not the ginger ninja, but the ginger.
I'm a redhead on occasion.
On occasion. Okay, we've actually gone like way over an hour, but I need one. I need one hashtag over it or nah for Sharona. Are you over it or nah on Rally Cheetos?
Nah, I've got some left. Listen.
I just want to know how you were doing on Saturday because the Alabama game
It was awful.
No, it was not good.
Listen, I had no expectations that we were going to win that game, even if we were healthy, which we were amazingly so not. So, and Alabama's the best team in the country. I think that's pretty clear. And Nick Saban is a good coach, but fuck Lane Kiffin forever.
Oh, did he throw his visor into the stand? Is that what happened at the end?
So that's all I got to say about that.
And I'm not talking about that no more. Yeah, that's yeah. I just grabbed my canned beer for the beach. I didn't really like canned beer for a while, but now I'm kind of digging it. And of course, this Even More Jesus is like a super strong porter.
It looks like something I would like.
It is good. I might save you one because it's quite tasty.
I
feel like at the beach, I need more of my sours and fruity beers you don't like because that seems to fit the season a little better.
Speaking of trips, I will be in Columbia for the Gamecocks Volunteers game. I leave a week from Friday.
So expect some drunk tweets coming on. Hashtag drunk.
There probably will be, as a matter of fact, and there might be, I don't know, we'll see. I'll have to gauge the interest of the group about doing any kind of live video, live posting photos.
Yeah, please, Facebook Live would be glorious. Or Periscope, whatever.
Yeah, so anyway.
You're wearing your Peyton Manning jersey, right? No?
I have no idea. I have been to a game in Columbia. Maybe I'll share that story next week. But yes, it should be fun. I'm wearing my Batman shirt tonight. Batman.
I'm wearing my Titans Batman.
Batman.
Senor Ocho. Try to have him say something interesting in his interview. I dare you.
So
the least interesting person in the country, Marcus Mariota.
Shut up. He is not.
That is exactly how you should be as a quarterback in the NFL. Be boring. You're going to do just fine. You're going to get money's going to flow in.
It just means he's not going to do any or say anything stupid and get in trouble.
He's not going to get into shirtless parties like Vince Young. Trust me.
Oh God. I mean that was kind of the culmination of the whole let's throw it in the face of Houston thing by Bud, and so
I still love Vince Young. I don't care what anybody says.
So much promise. I'm still so disappointed. I'm just so
watch highlights of that championship game against USC.
Greatest college game I've ever seen.
And I understand how you feel about Charlie Strong. I still love the guy. I still think he's a good coach. I understand, the situation. But let's face it, changing the culture that Mac Brown had cultivated at the end of his tenure in Texas had to be done. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that anybody could have done it more successfully than Charlie Strong. Even if he doesn't survive, I think he's done a good job of that.
Well, it needed to be, kind of like what Hugh Jackson's got to do in Cleveland. It needed to kind of be, blown up. But the problem there is you start to look at, do we have the capability now that it's been blown up? Do we have the capability of getting back where we want? And I think with Charlie Strong, you have serious questions if it's possible. So I think they're going to, unfortunately, I think they're going to look elsewhere to.
I understand that they might do that. I understand that college, despite what the farce that they want to try to enforce, that it's college student athletes and all that, I understand that it's $1 billion business. Okay, I understand that.
What was the report I saw today that maybe it was UT or maybe it was it had to have been UT. They said that each football player was worth like $640,000 or some crazy number like that.
It's crazy. It's amazing, and they're not being paid a dime. And
the money's strong. I mean, talk to my local Georgia fans as they lost to Vandy last week.
As a UT,
sadness.
As a UT, myself, UT guy. It's been hard since we had Colt McCoy there against Alabama at national championship game, and they fought hard in that game. They lost, but it's been hard since then. And before Vince Young and Mac Brown resurrected Texas, it was a long time before they were really relevant. From 1969, 1970, or whatnot, and so unfortunately, this is a society where you need things now. And what have you done for me lately?
Well, there's a lot of
it's been 10 years now.
there's a lot of parity too, and you mentioned Houston, and listen, the days are gone where these guys are going to go to a Texas or a Tennessee or even a Florida now. I mean, look at Florida, because it is Tennessee, Texas, or Florida. They're going to go where they play, and I mean, there's still some of that, but
The most ridiculous thing, let me tell you, Sharona, about what I've been hearing lately is, okay, so when Charlie Strong or, Oklahoma or somebody is down here in Houston recruiting, because Houston's one of the biggest hotbeds for, college athletes from the high school level.
Mhm.
And they say this as a point. Well, do you really want, you want to stay home? Don't you want to play for a Big 12 school? Like, these kids have grown up. These are millennial kids. These are kids that were born in 2000 or the very late 90s. They don't care about the Big 12. I mean,
They don't even know what the Big 12
Big
is.
12 thinks that they've got this image.
There's not a lot of
SEC,
history.
and
mystique.
they're so sadly mistaken that they think that they're the SEC. No, this is why it was so stupid for them to just bypass letting BYU, Cincinnati, University of Houston, whoever, join the Big 12. Now they've again. I don't want to get back into this.
But they're a lesser conference.
Yeah. Why? No kid that I can tell you is that excited about, I got to play for the Big 12. Who cares? What's the Big 12 done every year? Is the Big 12 going to have a team in the Final Four this year? No. Did they last year? No, I don't think so. So
I remember that a couple of years ago, Ohio State jumped over TCU and Baylor because they had the brand name and they won the national title.
Right now,
who knows what would have happened if the other two teams would have had a shot.
And this is someone who's invested in the Big 12. To me, my opinion of the Big 12 is it's a fading, dying conference that has no defense, that just plays a bunch of crappy offensive teams, and has some teams, Baylor, Texas Tech, TCU. They mean something here in Texas, but around the country, you're probably like, what's the difference between the Big 12 and the Big East or the ACC? Not much. And you're just falling behind. They're clearly behind the Pac-12, the Big Ten, and the SEC. I mean, at best, they're the fourth most significant conference in college, and that's really not saying much.
Yeah, and the Big Ten, I kind of wish they could change their name because, the Big Ten is confusing. But now with Ohio State and Michigan there, they have a nice rivalry going.
That'll be fun.
Anybody else?
That'll be fun with John Harbaugh.
Yeah,
Jim Harbaugh.
I think that was some rumor, like LSU's like, we're going to get Harbaugh. It's like, come on, man.
Okay, we have
another college job.
Oh, yeah, after 2 years at Michigan, he's going to leave for LSU. No. That could be something for Texas, though, as Les Miles might be an option if they can't get
oh, please, Les Miles. I'd love that. That'd be awesome. College football needs Les Miles. We need you on that wall. We want you on that wall. My gosh, it's like 9:30. How we doing, everybody? Having a good time. How's the Pumpkinator? Is there any left?
No, there's not. It's making me the most sad.
I've got a little bit of dragon's milk left, just a little.
Got my more Jesus, and this is.
It's so awesome.
I went 10% quad, and this is a 12%. This is some strong beer right here. This is strong, but you have to be strong to keep up with Sharona and to keep up with Jody. So Jody, tell everybody, as we kind of close out, what's happened to Gridiron Experts? Seems like you got a lot going on there.
Oh, just the usual. Oh, yeah. We don't have a lot of shirts, but I got one for myself. The usual we have going on is I'm going to update the projections tonight. Like I said, today was like a massive death among all the running backs. So I've got a huge update that's coming out now, but we got a lot of features, the normal features that are coming out, and we'll have my. I'm still in the dark if I'm going to have a bold prediction article, even though it was exciting. It gets hard to write that every week, but other than that, like I said, the rating, my projections update version 2 should be coming out, I think, tomorrow. That'll be the most recent thing. But other than that, it's just business as usual, and here we are. Unfortunately and sadly, it's the halfway point of the fantasy season, and
It's true.
yeah, that's like I said, that's kind of sad because before we know it, in 2 months, it's all over for another, and then there's the long wait, the worst part of the year.
Enjoy every Sunday. Jody Smith NFL on Twitter, everybody. That's pretty much where you go. Sharona, how's the back talk?
Bat Talk has been on a bit of a break, a little bit. As you guys know, there's been party around here lately. Because we've been celebrating birthdays and the anniversary of my mom's death, and which is not a celebration, but since she died my sister and I share a birthday. I was born one day shy of her birthday, but she had been born like 10 years before me. So I'm kind of the late in life child. So anyway, but we're going to be back this week with one show at the end of the week, and we're going to be talking about debates and lots of other good stuff. So, yeah. So follow me on Twitter, Sports by Sharona. You can find out information about that.
If you think I tweet a lot, Sharona's already 100,000 ahead of me, just to let you know. Zach_Law. Haven't posted since my sour article. Maybe I need to do a little beach beer talk when I'm on the beach. But you know what? I'm going to do what I like to do in the beach. So Friday at about 9 o'clock, I'm going to have my first beer because I can. And I might do a Facebook Live video just because that would be fun. And the beach is amazing. So that's where we're going to be the next 4 days. I'm going to hopefully get home in time to catch up on Red Zone and maybe watch the Titans have a 3-game winning streak, which they probably haven't had in this millennium, but we'll find out shortly. So thank you, Jody, for being on. I'm glad that I saw your tweet about you wanting to be on shows. I'm like, come here. Join us. You are one of
Jody,
us. Become assimilated.
Open invitation to come on this show anytime you want.
See, we say going for 2, but like the Browns in their last touchdown, they wish they could have gone for 3. So it's nice to have an extra person on. So thank you, Jody, for being on. Thank you, Sharona, of course, for going, the A game with the Dragon's Milk. And as we like to sign off, kiss my grapes.